4 months after routine cataract surgery, when this patient was discharged with 6/5 vision and a well-centered intraocular lens, and no known risk factors such as pseudoexfoliation, previous intraocular surgery, or indeed surgical complications, I received this letter from her. She was pleased with the visual outcome of surgery. She complained that although her vision was good when her eye was still, she clearly noticed everything jumping and, in her words, juddering whenever she moved her eyes. This bothered her during sports and any other activity. As I could not find anything on routine examination and everything seemed to be in place, I obtained a second opinion. My colleague diagnosed pseudophacodonesis and attributed his symptoms to this. However, he referred her back to me for further management. After much discussion and reluctance on my part to operate on a 6/5 seeing eye, we finally agreed to reoperate to stabilize the capsular bag complex because the symptoms were getting worse. At surgery, exploration did not show any frank zonular loss. However, I proceeded to reopen the capsular bag using a mixture of blunt dissection with a Rycroft cannula and forceps, and then injected OVD into the capsular bag to reopen it. The next step was to create two Hoffman-style scleral pockets, beginning with two incisions 400 microns deep, like a limbal relaxing incision, and then backward dissection into the sclera without disturbing the conjunctiva. Care was taken to make these pockets large enough to allow suture placement, which is about 3 mm by 3 mm. The capsule tension segment with a 9-proline suture pre-threaded through the central segment was then placed into the capsular bag. I constantly used two instruments and a bimanual technique to try and stabilize the eye and reduce the amount of movement and surgical trauma to the remaining zonules. Two passes of the double-arm proline suture with CIF4 type needles were then made through the full thickness of the scleral pocket, with the needle emerging through the conjunctiva, and then the loop of suture was drawn out through the LRI type incision. The second pass of the needle was made similarly, following which the needles could be removed and the two loops which had been pulled out from the pocket now became two free ends of the suture. As this is withdrawn, the capsular tension segment disappears into the capsular bag except for the little knuckle of the central segment. The suture is ready for tying, but I've left it there at this stage to try and ensure an equal tension on both sides, and I repeat the whole procedure 180 degrees opposite to the first placement. Another capsule tension segment is placed within the capsular bag with the central little C-arm in front of the capsular axis. The pre-threaded 9-proline suture can also be seen in place. I then position the second segment at 180 degrees opposite to the first one and carefully pass two arms of the double arm suture, one needle at a time, placed under the iris but anterior to the anterior capsule and through the full thickness of the tunnel emerging out of the conjunctiva. The loop is then extracted and the second arm of the suture is passed through in a similar manner. Once the second needle has also been passed full thickness out of the conjunctiva, the loop of suture is then extracted through the scleral pocket as well. By cutting and removing the needles and withdrawing the suture, I get two free ends of suture which can then be tied in. Once I've thrown my first throw, I adjust the tension on this to try and get as central a lens as I can and repeat the procedure at the same time, ending with a well-supported lens which is now tied in by two segments of suture within scleral pockets on both sides. She is now 2 years post-surgery with no new symptoms and quite pleased. Thank you.